Welcome in, and thank you so much for joining us for another custom-tailored deep dive.
It is great to be here.
We really have a fascinating set of source materials lined up for you today.
Yeah, listen.
Our focus today is a incredibly comprehensive Wikipedia article, and it details the biology, the history, and the current conservation status of the brown teal.
Right, also known by its Maori name, the Pāteke.
Exactly, the Pāteke. And our mission for this deep dive today is twofold, really.
Yeah.
First, we are going to examine how this, well, seemingly unassuming little duck evolved a highly unusual, almost bizarre set of survival skills just to navigate the ancient New Zealand landscape.
Which is a wild story on its own.
It really is. And second, we're going to use the Pāteke as a lens for you to examine the highly complex and honestly often contested science of bringing a critically endangered species back from the brink of extinction.
Yeah, because it serves as a near-perfect case study for the broader ecological challenges we're seeing globally right now. When you look closely at the biological history of the Pāteke, you are looking at a species that perfectly adapted to a very, very specific set of ancient evolutionary pressures.
Right.
Only to have that entire ecological chessboard just flipped upside down by human colonization.
Completely flip.
And furthermore, tracing their modern recovery efforts highlights the intricate puzzle of contemporary conservation. I mean, we're moving far past the simplistic idea of just breeding birds and releasing them.
Yeah, it's not that simple anymore.
No, not at all. We're dealing with complex genetic bottlenecks and the permanent alteration of natural habitats.
And that tension, that exact tension between ancient adaptation and modern survival is what makes this specific bird so compelling to learn about.
It really is.
I mean, for you listening, we're looking at a story involving ancient airborne predators, a totally unique jackhammer feeding technique.
Which challenges everything we know about waterfowl biomechanics, by the way.
Exactly. And a genetic mystery that complicates what it actually means to preserve a species.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. So to start, let's just visualize the brown teal for a second.
Paint us a picture.
Right. So if you were out observing these birds in their natural wetland habitat during the non-mating season, honestly, you might overlook them entirely.
They blend right in.
They really do. The males, the females, the juveniles, they all share a very similar, highly camouflaged appearance.
Right, those muted tones.
Yeah, they have these subtly modeled brown heads and throats, and a very distinct white ring around their eyes.
It's a plumage specifically designed to blend seamlessly into the shadows of a riverbank.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, the seasonal shift.
Yes, the seasonal plumage shift is just dramatic.
Especially when you consider the physiological energy required to actually maintain such a rapid change.
It's a profound transformation for the bird, because as the breeding season approaches, the male brown teal just entirely sheds that uniform camouflage.
How with the brown?
Right, the mottled brown is replaced by this brilliant iridescent green head. And their breast feathers transition into a really rich chestnut color. Plus, they develop these sharp, highly visible white stripes running down their flanks.
Yeah, those side stripes are very distinct.
And in some instances, the source material notes, the males even develop a white clerical neckband. So they're presenting this stark visual contrast to their surroundings.
Like a little glowing beacon in the wetlands.
Exactly. And there's a significant degree of variation here, too. Some males present much more vibrant, flashy plumage than others within the exact same population.
Which points to a complex sexual selection process driving that variation.
Right.
But, to truly understand the significance of this bird today, we really have to contextualize its current rarity against its historical baseline for you.
Because it wasn't always rare.
Not at all. During the early years of European colonization in New Zealand, the Pāteke was incredibly abundant.
Like everywhere.
Exactly. They were a ubiquitous presence across the wetland ecosystems of the whole country. In fact, their population density was so high that early European settlers relied on them heavily as a primary food source.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were harvesting them in massive numbers, and they just referred to them under this rather utilitarian moniker of brown duck.
Just brown duck.
Just brown duck.
That historical abundance makes the subsequent population data that we have incredibly jarring to read.
It's a steep drop.
A catastrophic drop. The harvest pressures you mentioned, combined with massive habitat loss, triggered this rapid population collapse.
Right.
And the data indicates this decline was especially severe down in New Zealand's South Island.
Yeah.
The population there was essentially decimated in just a matter of decades.
It happened so fast.
So fast that by 1921, the government was forced to institute full legal protection for the species.
Which was quite early for conservation laws.
It was. Yet over a century later, their status remains highly precarious today.
Very much so.
The IUCN currently classifies them as near threatened, specifically under their vulnerable D1 categorization.
While BirdLife International actually elevates that threat level to endangered.
Right. Because we are currently looking at a global population of fewer than 1,000 adult birds remaining in the wild.
And a population of fewer than 1,000 adults. That represents a razor-thin margin for error.
It really does.
And understanding why they have struggled so profoundly to recover, well, it requires us to examine their specific behavioral adaptations.
Because they don't act like normal ducks.
No, they don't. Unlike the vast majority of dabbling ducks globally, the brown teal operates almost exclusively on the night shift.
The night shift.
Yeah, they're a predominantly nocturnal species.
And that nocturnal adaptation is such a fascinating biological pivot for a waterfowl.
It's extremely rare.
It really forces you to ask, what environmental pressures drove a duck to abandon the daylight hours entirely?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the nocturnal behavior is a highly specialized evolutionary response to the apex predators that historically dominated the New Zealand ecosystem.
The ones flying above them.
Exactly. For millennia, the primary threats to the Pāteke came from above.
Right.
They were hunted by diurnal, meaning daytime hunting aerial predators.
So we're talking about the New Zealand falcon, right?
The New Zealand falcon, yes.
Yeah.
And the formidable, now extinct Isles harrier.
Wow.
And even aggressive skuas further down south.
So they were constantly being watched from the mammals.
Precisely. The biological defense mechanisms of the Pāteke were just entirely mismatched for mammalian predators.
Because hiding in the dark is an exceptionally effective strategy against a hawk hunting by sight.
Right.
But it offers absolutely zero protection against an introduced stoat or a ferret, a feral cat, or a dog.
Because they hunt primarily by scent.
Right. Light doesn't matter to a nose.
Exactly. These mammals can easily locate the birds regardless of the light conditions.
And they can't really fly away quickly either, right?
No, they can't. The brown teal is characterized in the literature as unwary and weakly flying.
Weakly flying.
Yeah, so when a ground-based mammal infiltrates their habitat, a duck that is reluctant to flush and poor at gaining altitude just becomes an incredibly easy target.
A sitting duck, literally.
Literally. And this vulnerability extends to their reproductive cycle as well.
The eggs.
Yes. Introduced rats are systematically locating and consuming their eggs in the dark.
It is a textbook example of an evolutionary trap.
It really is.
The environment changed way faster than the species could possibly adapt.
Much faster.
But that nocturnal lifestyle, it isn't just about hiding. It has profoundly shaped their foraging mechanics, too.
Oh, their diet is fascinating.
It is. Their diet involves some incredibly specialized behaviors that are quite unusual for a duck of this size.
The foraging mechanics actually present one of the most compelling aspects of their whole biology.
Let's get into it. They utilize standard dabbling and upbending techniques in the water, right?
Sure, like most ducks.
To feed on aquatic invertebrates, insects, larvae, and crustaceans.
The usual stuff.
The usual. But their dietary profile shows a massive specific preference for mollusks.
Hard-shelled mollusks.
Yes. When they encounter smaller bivalve species, like the paipai or the large wedge shell, they consume them entirely intact. Whole. They rely on their gizzards to physically crush the shells during the digestive process.
Which is wild.
It implies a remarkably robust internal physiology.
It does. Processing intact, hard-shelled mollusks requires significant mechanical force within the digestive tract.
It takes effort.
Huge effort. It demands high energy expenditure just for digestion.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because their approach to larger mollusks is where their behavior diverges into truly uncharted territory.
This is the best part.
It is. When the brown teal targets the larger, heavily armored New Zealand cockles, they use a feeding technique that, according to the research, is entirely undocumented in any other avian species globally.
Nowhere else.
Nowhere else. Rather than attempting to swallow the cockle whole, which they can't do, they force their relatively soft, sensitive duck bills directly between the tightly clamped shells of the bivalve.
Just wedge it in there.
Wedge it right in. And once inserted, they utilize a rapid jackhammer-like pumping motion to mechanically tear the flesh directly out of the shell.
The biomechanics of that action are just staggering when you really consider the anatomy involved.
Because it's a soft bill.
Right. You have a waterfowl using a bill, which is highly innervated, very sensitive, and relatively pliable compared to, say, the beak of a raptor or a parrot.
Yeah.
And they're using it as a pneumatic drill against a heavily calcified shell.
It's
It
incredible.
requires an extraordinary degree of muscular control and specialized leverage to execute that jackhammer motion without sustaining significant damage to the bill itself.
Seriously.
Furthermore, this intense foraging isn't restricted to just aquatic environments.
Right, they go walking.
They do. To build out the picture of their nocturnal routine for you, the source material notes that these birds will actively leave their daytime stream refuges at night.
Just hop out of the water.
Yep, and travel considerable distances overland.
Wow.
They are undertaking significant terrestrial foraging, literally walking through the dark forest undergrowth to secure these complex food sources.
That terrestrial foraging really highlights the sheer amount of energy they have to expend every single night.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. Walking long distances overland and mechanically drilling into bivalves is a highly caloric-intensive lifestyle.
Very much so.
And that energy demand becomes exceptionally critical when you examine the biological toll of their reproductive cycle.
The breeding season.
Yes. Their breeding habits require a massive, sustained investment of resources from both the male and the female.
Because the reproductive strategy of the Pāteke is heavily focused on specialized microhabitats
Right.
and a very strict division of labor.
Yes, very strict. When selecting a nesting site, they actively seek out areas directly adjacent to water or heavily concealed beneath the dense shelter of large carex sedge grasses.
They need that cover.
They construct these nests using dry grasses, but the critical component is the heavy lining of down feathers they use to insulate the structure.
For thermal regulation.
Exactly. The thermal regulation is vital because the female is preparing to lay a clutch of 4 to 8 creamy brown eggs.
That's a big clutch.
And the incubation process is intensely demanding.
Oh, the energetic cost to the female during this period, it really cannot be overstated.
Because she takes on the entirety of the incubation duties.
All of it.
She will remain on that nest, regulating the temperature of the clutch for 27 to 30 consecutive days.
Almost a month.
Almost a month. And while she is essentially anchored to the nest, the male adopts a highly aggressive territorial defense posture,
He becomes a security guard.
the sole security detail for the perimeter. He actively patrols the area and violently fights off any other waterfowl that encroach upon the territory.
It is a highly coordinated, extremely high-stress period for the pair.
It really is.
And we must contextualize where these high-stakes breeding cycles are actually occurring today.
Right, because it's not just out in the open woods anymore.
No. Given the devastating impact of the mammalian predators we discussed earlier, you will rarely find these natural family dynamics playing out in unprotected wilderness on the mainland.
It's too dangerous.
Much too dangerous.
Yeah.
The survival of the species relies almost entirely on intense human management now. Currently, their populations are restricted predominantly to offshore islands where invasive predators have been completely eradicated.
Or specialized sanctuary.
Exactly. Highly specialized, predator-proof mainland sanctuaries.
And the logistics of maintaining those sanctuaries are immense. Taharanui Regional Park is frequently cited as a prime example of this strategy.
Oh, Taharanui represents a monumental engineering and ecological effort.
It's incredible.
These sanctuaries utilize extensive, highly specialized fencing systems. They are designed specifically to prevent the incursion of everything from the smallest mouse to a feral cat.
Which is so hard to do.
It is, and that's combined with relentless internal trapping programs.
Right?
It allows the Pāteke to breed without the constant pressure of scent-hunting mammals.
Which they desperately need.
But while these sanctuaries are vital, they inherently restrict the birds to isolated, tightly controlled pockets of habitat.
They're fenced in.
Right. However, there are significant efforts underway to expand their footprint beyond these fenced enclosures.
Which is the ultimate goal.
A notable recent milestone occurred in the Ulpoto River system, located within the Abel Tasman National Park.
Oh, right.
Starting in 2017, the Department of Conservation, working with Project Yanzun, initiated a release program that introduced just under 300 brown teals into the area.
And reintroducing a vulnerable species into an unfenced wild river system is a massive calculated risk.
It's a huge risk.
But the fact that those roughly 300 birds are now successfully breeding in the wild in the South Island, it represents a major functional victory for those conservation teams.
It's a huge win. It proves the habitat can still support them if the initial predatory pressures are managed.
Right. Yet, as we dig deeper into the taxonomic history and the genetics of these recovery programs, the definition of a victory becomes significantly more complicated.
It forces us to confront the hidden biological costs of these recovery strategies.
Let's talk about the genetics. If we look at the evolutionary lineage, the brown teal is incredibly significant.
Oh, absolutely.
It is actually the progenitor, the direct ancestor of both the flightless Auckland teal and the Campbell teals.
Right.
Historically, they were all grouped together, but modern taxonomy recognizes them as distinct, separate species due to prolonged geographic isolation, distinct variations in plumage and size, and definitive genetic divergence.
They've drifted apart.
Exactly. So today, the name Pāteke applies exclusively to the brown teal.
Yes.
But the genetic science that clarifies their taxonomy is currently highlighting a massive systemic vulnerability in how we are actually saving them.
What's fascinating here is how the mechanics of the captive breeding program have inadvertently engineered a biological bottleneck.
This is so important.
It is. The success stories we just highlighted, like the Opoto River release, are heavily reliant on birds generated through captive breeding.
Right, breeding them in safety.
However, the foundational stock for that entire captive breeding program was sourced from a single population located on Great Barrier Island.
Which fundamentally limits the genetic material available from the very beginning.
Exactly the issue. The genetic profiling of the Great Barrier Island population revealed a severe lack of diversity.
How severe?
Well, they essentially presented only one genetic haplotype in abundance.
Wow. One.
Just one.
Hmm.
And as you know, a haplotype is a group of alleles inherited together from a single parent.
Right.
And when a founder population is built on such a narrow genetic expression, you are immediately fighting a severe bottleneck.
Because there's no variation.
None. The genetic uniformity makes the resulting population highly susceptible to disease and significantly less adaptable to future environmental shifts.
And that narrow genetic baseline stands in stark contrast to the other major remaining wild population of brown teal, which is located at Mimiwangata.
Yes, the Mimiwangata birds.
The genetic sampling of those birds identified 11 distinct haplotypes.
11 compared to 1. And this raises an important question regarding the long-term viability of the national recovery strategy.
Because of where the new birds are coming from.
Right. The newly established flocks, including that widely celebrated Opoto River population, are populated exclusively by birds originating from that single haplotype Great Barrier Island lineage.
So they all just have the one.
Yes. Consequently, the rich, robust genetic diversity present in the Mimiwangata population is entirely absent from these new national strongholds.
Wow.
We are successfully increasing the raw numerical headcount of the species.
Which is good.
It is good, but we are effectively populating these hard-won sanctuaries with a genetically monolithic version of the bird.
It is an agonizing ecological trade-off.
Truly agonizing.
We are prioritizing immediate numerical stabilization over long-term genetic resilience.
We need birds on the ground now.
Right. But we're potentially handicapping their ability to adapt to the very environments we are releasing them into.
Exactly.
And the complexities of avian genetics become even more pronounced when we examine the recent history of the Fiordland brown teal population.
This is a tough story.
It's tragic. Historically, there was a distinct wild population of Pāteke surviving down in the Arthur Valley of Fiordland.
Yep.
But despite conservation monitoring, that specific localized population went completely extinct by the year 2013.
A total collapse of a unique regional variant.
It's just gone. And following that localized extinction, conservation teams moved to repopulate the area, once again utilizing birds sourced from the captive origin program.
From the Great Barrier Island line.
Yes. So they effectively replaced the lost Fiordland birds with the genetically narrow single haplotype lineage.
Right.
But the real revelation occurred when researchers subsequently analyzed the genetic sequences of the original, now extinct Fiordland birds.
The sequencing of those extinct specimens yielded results that fundamentally disrupt our traditional concepts of species preservation.
It blew my mind.
It's wild. The genetic data of the former Fiordland population demonstrated striking, undeniable similarities to the genetic sequences of the gray duck and the mallard,
which are invaders.
both of which are highly prevalent invasive species in that specific region.
Unbelievable.
The scientific consensus drawn from this data is that before they finally succumbed to extinction, the native Fiordland brown teals had engaged in extensive widespread hybridization with these invading waterfowl.
They were actively interbreeding with the invasive species.
Yeah. It suggests a scenario where, facing overwhelming environmental pressure and population decline, the localized brown teal population essentially began merging its genetic identity with the more dominant introduced ducks.
They were trying to survive.
They were actively morphing into a hybridized variant just before they vanished.
And our subsequent conservation response
Right.
was to declare that specific evolutionary experiment over, scrub the area, and insert a captive-bred genetically uniform version of the bird in its place.
It perfectly encapsulates the philosophical tightrope of modern ecology.
Doesn't it?
Are we facilitating a natural ecosystem, or are we actively overriding the messy realities of adaptation just to maintain a historical baseline?
That is the big question.
It's a phenomenal amount of complexity to extract from the profile of a single waterfowl.
A tiny little duck.
Over the course of this deep dive, we have traced the Pāteke from its historical abundance to its near eradication. We've examined how its ancient adaptation to hide from daylight raptors left it critically exposed to introduced ground mammals. The evolutionary trap.
We've explored the astonishing biomechanics of a soft-billed duck utilizing a jackhammer motion to breach heavily armored bivalves in the dark.
Still blows my mind.
And we've navigated the intense genetic dilemmas where increasing a population's numbers might actually be eroding its biological resilience.
The single haplotype problem.
Right. So what does this all mean for you listening?
Why does it matter?
It serves as a stark reminder that the natural world operates on a scale of interconnected complexity that really defies simple solutions.
There are no easy fixes.
It demonstrates that our attempts to save a species are never isolated events. Every intervention, from erecting a predator-proof fence to selecting the genetic stock for a breeding program, actively shapes the evolutionary trajectory of the species.
And that leads directly into a final conceptual challenge I want to leave you with today.
Please do.
We just discussed how the original Fiordland population hybridized extensively with invasive mallards, likely as a desperate biological mechanism to survive an altered landscape, only to be subsequently replaced by humans with a genetically uniform, quote-unquote, pure captive line.
Yeah.
That brings us to a rather profound scientific frontier for you to think about. If our current strategy of maintaining strict genetic purity leaves these birds fundamentally vulnerable to the modern predatory landscape.
Will things have to change?
Exactly. Will the conservation strategies of the next century require us to do the exact opposite? Might we eventually have to intentionally facilitate crossbreeding or even actively genetically engineer these birds with those very invaders just to impart the survival instincts necessary to outsmart a feral cat? Are we actually preserving nature's path, or are we just curating a living museum exhibit?
That is a brilliant and challenging framework to view the future of conservation through. Are we willing to fundamentally alter the biology of a species in order to save its ecological function?
It's something to think about.
It definitely is. Thank you so much for joining us and exploring these intricate ecological and genetic pathways today.
It's been a pleasure.
We really hope this analysis provides you a new lens through which to view the natural world and the immense efforts required to maintain it. Keep questioning the consensus, stay curious about the complexities hidden within our ecosystems, and we look forward to having you with us on the next deep dive.